At the company dinner, I watched my business partner add something to my drink while talking to investors. He thought I didn't notice, but I switched our glasses when he turned away, and when he took a sip during his speech, I leaned back and smiled. That's when his presentation took an unexpected turn. I watched Marcus's hand hover over my wine glass. He thought I was distracted, laughing at some investor's joke across the room, playing the charming co-founder who'd spent 5 years building DataSync from a garage startup to a $47 million valuation. But I saw everything in the reflection of the floor-to-ceiling window behind him. The small vial, clear liquid, the quick pour, maybe 3 drops, hard to tell from the reflection. The way he stirred it with his index finger before sliding my glass back to its exact position on the white tablecloth, smooth, practiced, like he'd done it before. "Alex, you good?" Marcus appeared beside me 30 seconds later, all smiles and champagne enthusiasm. "Big night, man. Biggest night of our lives. Never better." I clinked my glass against his, watching his eyes, looking for guilt, finding nothing but excitement and something else I couldn't quite place. To partnership, he echoed. My hand didn't shake when I lifted the glass to my lips, didn't take a sip, just held it there long enough to make it look natural, then set it back down. Tonight was supposed to be our celebration. $20 million in Series B funding. DataSync's biggest milestone. Our ticket from scrappy startup to legitimate enterprise. Marcus was giving the keynote speech in 10 minutes. The big announcement to 40 investors, partners, and tech journalists gathered in this Peninsula Hotel ballroom. But he'd been acting strange for weeks. Secretive phone calls that ended abruptly when I walked into rooms. Closed-door meetings with investors I wasn't invited to, despite being co-founder and CTO. Documents on his laptop he'd close the second I glanced over. Late nights at the office when I knew he'd stopped coding years ago. Something was wrong, and now he'd just drugged my drink. I'd met Marcus 5 years ago at Tech Launch Accelerator, the 12-week program in San Francisco that promised to turn promising ideas into fundable companies. I was 26, fresh out of Stanford with a computer science PhD and a prototype for data synchronization software that could revolutionize how small businesses manage their information across platforms. Technical genius, zero business sense. Marcus was 28, MBA from Wharton, 3 years at Goldman Sachs, and the kind of charisma that made investors reach for their checkbooks. He had the business acumen I lacked. I had the technical expertise he needed. We were perfect partners. We'd built DataSync together, literally together, working 18-hour days in Marcus's studio apartment in the Mission District, surviving on ramen and cold brew, and the absolute certainty that we were building something that mattered. We'd landed our first 10 clients in month 3, then our first 100 by year 1, then our first 1,000 by year 2. The revenue grew, the team grew. We moved from the apartment to a real office in Soma with exposed brick and a ping-pong table and all the startup trappings we'd once made fun of. By year 3, we had 60 employees and $8 million in annual recurring revenue. By year 4, we'd hit $23 million. Now year 5, we were projecting $45 million. Series B funding was supposed to be our rocket fuel, the capital that would let us expand internationally, build out the sales team, dominate the market. But something had shifted in Marcus over the past year. Small things at first, taking credit for features I'd built during investor calls, referring to DataSync as my company instead of our company, gradually cutting me out of strategic decisions. Then, 3 weeks ago, I'd noticed the pattern. Marcus had started traveling more. Quick trips to New York, Los Angeles, Austin, always alone, always vague about the purpose. Meeting potential partners, he'd say, exploring opportunities. 2 weeks ago, I'd walked past his office late one night. The door was cracked open. He was on a video call, speaking in hushed tones. "Need to move faster. Alex is starting to ask questions. If we don't execute before the Series B closes," I'd frozen in the hallway. "Can't keep stalling. The restructuring needs to happen simultaneously with the funding announcement. Otherwise, he'll have time to..." He'd noticed me then, ended the call abruptly, smiled that easy smile. "Hey man, just wrapping up with some lawyers. Legal stuff for the funding round. Boring as hell." I'd nodded, pretended to believe him, but I'd started paying attention. Yesterday afternoon, I'd found the term sheet. I'd been looking for Q3 financial projections in Marcus's desk, completely innocent. He'd mentioned they were in his bottom drawer. Instead, I'd found a document on expensive paper stock with a law firm letterhead I didn't recognize. Morrison, Burke & Associates, Corporate Restructuring Division. I'd photographed it with my phone, read it later in my car. Marcus wasn't raising Series B funding to grow the company. He was selling it without telling me. The term sheet outlined a complex equity restructuring that would dilute my 40% shares to essentially nothing through creative financial engineering, new preferred shares, liquidation preferences, anti-dilution provisions, all designed to push me out while making it look legitimate on paper. By tomorrow morning, according to the timeline in the document, I'd be voted off the board I'd helped create, pushed out of the company I'd built with my own code, left with shares worth maybe $200,000 while Marcus walked away with tens of millions. The investors tonight tonight weren't here to celebrate our milestone. They were here to finalize his betrayal. I need to hit the restroom before the speech, Marcus said, adjusting his Tom Ford tie. $350 I knew because he'd bragged about it last week. Too much champagne. Watch my drink? Of course, brother. I gave him the same easy smile we'd perfected through 1,000 pitch meetings. Go ahead. The moment he turned away, walking toward the bathroom with that confident stride, I looked at our 2 wine glasses. His, mine, identical. Both half full of a 2015 Bordeaux that probably cost $400 a bottle. One of them was poisoned. My heart hammered against my ribs. My palms were slick with sweat, but my hands stayed steady when I reached out and switched the glasses. One smooth movement, his glass to my place setting, mine to his. The tablecloth was crowded enough. Wine glasses, water glasses, champagne flutes, appetizer plates, that anyone watching would just see hands moving. Natural, casual. This was insane. This was potentially illegal. This could destroy everything, but so could drinking whatever Marcus had just put in my wine. I sat back, picked up my phone, pretended to check emails while my pulse hammered in my ears. What had he put in the drink? Rohypnol? Some kind of sedative? Something to make me disoriented and compliant while he presented restructuring paperwork I'd be too confused to understand? Marcus returned 3 minutes later, grabbed his glass, my glass, the one I'd been holding 5 minutes ago, and took a long sip. Showtime, he said, his eyes bright with anticipation, with something that looked almost like excitement. He thought he was about to drug me, thought he'd watch me get disoriented and confused during his big announcement, too impaired to object when they presented the restructuring terms I'd sign away in my pharmaceutical haze. The lights dimmed, soft jazz faded out. A spotlight illuminated the small stage at the front of the ballroom. Marcus walked to the podium with perfect posture, confident, practiced, the consummate businessman about to close the deal of his life. I found a seat in the back row, away from the main investor tables, away from the journalists, somewhere I could watch everything unfold without being watched myself. Perfect view. Good evening, everyone. Marcus's voice boomed through the sound system, confident and commanding. Thank you for being here tonight to celebrate DataSync's incredible journey. Polite applause rippled through the room. Some investors were already back on their phones, checking emails, half present at yet another startup celebration. 5 years ago, my partner Alex Chen and I had a vision. He gestured toward me with practiced magnanimity. I waved, played my part, the technical co-founder who let the business guy do the talking. We wanted to revolutionize data management for small businesses, make enterprise-level synchronization accessible to companies that couldn't afford the big legacy systems. More applause. A journalist's camera flashed, probably TechCrunch. They loved these stories. And tonight, Marcus continued, his smile widening, I'm thrilled to announce the next phase of DataSync's evolution, a phase that will transform us from a promising startup into a market-dominating force. I leaned back in my chair, crossed my arms, waited. This was it, the betrayal speech, the big revelation that would frame my removal as strategic restructuring or leadership evolution or whatever corporate euphemism he'd workshopped with his new lawyers. Tonight I'm thrilled to... Marcus paused, blinked hard, touched his temple like he was fighting off a headache. The room shifted slightly. A few people noticed. Most didn't. Tonight I'm thrilled to... Another pause, longer this time. He squinted at the teleprompter like the words were swimming. To announce, his face flushed red, not embarrassment red, medical red. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the aggressive air conditioning. Are you all right? Jennifer Hartwell called from the front table, lead investor from Cascade Ventures, the woman who'd written the $8 million Series A check. I'm fine. Marcus gripped the podium with both hands, knuckles going white. Just need a second. It's warm in here. Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Whispers started. As I was saying, Marcus continued, but his words were starting to slur slightly, consonants blurring together like he'd had too much to drink. Tonight we're announcing a major change in DataSync's leadership structure that will, he squinted at his notes. The papers trembled in his hands, in a way that benefits everyone involved in his pupils were massive, dilated beyond anything normal. Even from the back row, I could see it. 2 black pools where his eyes should be, swallowing the hazel I'd known for 5 years. I'm sorry. Marcus touched his face like he was checking if it was still attached to his skull. I'm not feeling... Something's wrong. Something's very wrong. Maybe we should take a break, Jennifer Hartwell suggested, already standing. She was mid-40s, partner at one of Silicon Valley's top VC firms, and clearly knew when a pitch was going catastrophically sideways. No, I'm fine. Marcus straightened with visible effort, shook his head like he could shake off whatever was happening to him, took another long sip of wine. Bigger mistake. Whatever he'd put in that glass, whatever pharmaceutical cocktail he'd planned to use on me, was hitting him in waves now. I could see it in real time. The way his expression softened, turned dreamy, lost the careful control he always maintained in public. His mask was slipping. I need to tell you all something. His voice changed, slower, more languid, like he was talking through honey. Something I've been hiding from everyone. The room went completely silent. Jennifer Hartwell sat back down slowly. Every phone in the room turned off. Every eye focused on the stage. Every investor, journalist, and partner suddenly paying full attention. I've been lying, Marcus said. He actually laughed. laughed, a loose, inappropriate sound that echoed through the speakers. To everyone, to Alex, to all of you, to the board, to the press, to everyone. An investor 3 tables up, Robert Chen from Summit Partners, no relation, stood halfway out of his chair. Marcus, I think you should sit down. The funding round? Marcus's words came faster now, tumbling over each other like he couldn't control what was leaving his mouth. The Series B we're supposed to be celebrating tonight? I've been taking kickbacks, 20% to offshore accounts, shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Jennifer doesn't know about those. Nobody knows about those. Nobody was supposed to know. My chest tightened. My hands gripped the armrests hard enough to hurt. What the hell had he put in that wine? Jennifer Hartwell's face went white, chalk white. What are you talking about? And the revenue numbers? Marcus swayed slightly, catching himself on the podium. The 45 million we're projecting, inflated by 42%. I've been cooking the books for 18 months, made up clients, fictional contracts, completely fake companies that don't exist, made DataSync look way more valuable than it actually is, so we could raise at a higher valuation and I could take more money off the table. Investors surged toward the stage. Phones came out, dozens of them, recording, documenting, capturing every word of this confession. Marcus, stop talking, Jennifer shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Do not say another word. As your lead investor, I'm instructing you to stop speaking immediately. But he couldn't stop. Whatever the drug did, whatever truth serum or pharmaceutical interrogation tool he'd planned to use on me, it stripped away filters, made lying impossible, turned internal thoughts into external confessions. And Alex? Marcus pointed at me with a loose, uncoordinated gesture that nearly knocked over the podium microphone. My brilliant partner Alex Chen sitting right there. I was going to force him out tonight, dilute his shares to nothing through equity restructuring. The paperwork's already drawn up. Morrison, Burke and Associates have been working on it for 2 months. Cost me $180,000 in legal fees. I was going to take everything we built and push him out with maybe $200,000 while I walked away with the whole company. The room erupted. Shouts, chairs scraping against hardwood. The TechCrunch journalist was typing frantically on her phone, probably filing the story in real time. Jennifer Hartwell grabbed Marcus's arm, trying to physically pull him away from the microphone. What the hell are you saying? What have you done? I'm saying I'm a fraud. Marcus smiled dreamily, like he was confessing to eating the last cookie instead of securities fraud in front of 40 witnesses. A complete fraud, and I drugged Alex's drink tonight with Rohypnol and something else I bought on the dark web. I don't remember the name. Some research chemical from a vendor in Prague. Wanted him disoriented for the signing, confused, compliant, easy to manipulate. My lawyer said if he signed the restructuring papers while impaired, we could argue he knew what he was agreeing to, and hotel security moved in. 2 large men in black suits, professional security, not our people, flanked the stage with the practiced efficiency of people who'd handled situations exactly like this before. Marcus tried to pull away, but his coordination was completely gone. His legs weren't working right. Wait, why am I telling you this? These thoughts were supposed to stay inside my head. Why can't I stop talking? What's happening to me? Get him off the stage, Jennifer snapped, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. And someone call our lawyers. Right now. Everyone shut off your recordings. Attorney-client privilege applies here. Too late. Way too late for that. They dragged Marcus toward the side exit. He was still talking, still confessing, physically incapable of stopping himself. Something about offshore accounts in Singapore and fake vendor invoices, and how he'd been planning this for 6 months, ever since he realized he could sell DataSync for $200 million to a larger competitor if he could just get rid of the co-founder who actually built the technology and might object to the sale. The lead investor, Jennifer Hartwell, turned to address the room. Her face was composed, but I could see the rage underneath, barely contained. This event is over. We'll be conducting an immediate forensic audit of DataSync's financials starting first thing tomorrow morning. Everyone who invested in Series A, you'll be hearing from our legal team within 24 hours. She looked directly at me across the ballroom. Alex Chen, we need to talk, privately, right now. I stood slowly. Every eye in the ballroom followed me as I walked to the front. 40 people watching, judging, trying to figure out if I was complicit, if I'd known about the fraud, if this was some elaborate partnership scam. Ms. Hartwell, I said when I reached the front, my voice calmer than I felt. Marcus planned to drug me tonight, so I'd be too disoriented to understand the restructuring paperwork he was planning to present after his speech. But I saw him put something in my drink. I held up my wine glass, still full, untouched, evidence. So I switched our glasses when he went to the bathroom. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. Everything you just heard? I gestured toward the side exit where security had dragged Marcus, his voice still echoing faintly from the hallway. All those confessions about fraud and kickbacks and cooking the books? That was supposed to be me up there, confused, disoriented, compliant, signing away my company while too impaired to understand what was happening. Jennifer Hartwell stared at me, then at the wine glass in my hand, then back at me. We need to talk, she said quietly, and we need lawyers, lots of lawyers. The next 6 hours were a blur of attorneys and police and official statements. Jennifer Hartwell called her firm's legal team. They arrived at the Peninsula Hotel just before midnight midnight, 3 attorneys in expensive suits carrying briefcases and tablets, ready to contain what was about to become the biggest scandal in Silicon Valley that year. The lead attorney was Richard Morrison, mid-50s, senior partner at Holbrook & Morrison LLP, wearing a Patek Philippe that probably cost more than my car. He'd handled the legal work for 17 major tech IPOs and knew corporate crisis management better than anyone in the Bay Area. "Mr. Chen," he said, shaking my hand with a grip that communicated both authority and careful assessment, "we need your full cooperation in understanding what happened here tonight. Everything you saw, everything you know, everything Marcus may have told you in recent weeks or months." Of course, they set up in a private conference room on the second floor. Hotel staff brought coffee. Good coffee, not the usual hotel swill. Someone ordered sandwiches that nobody ate. They just sat there congealing while we talked for hours. "Walk me through exactly what you saw," Richard said, legal pad open, Mont Blanc pen poised. "Start with the moment you noticed Marcus near your wine glass." I told him everything, watching Marcus in the window reflection, the small vial, the practiced pour, the way he'd stirred it with his finger, the decision to switch glasses, Marcus's behavior during the speech, the confessions that kept pouring out of him like water from a broken dam. "Did you take a sample of the drugged wine?" Richard asked, making careful notes. "No, amateur mistake. I didn't think that far ahead. I was just reacting, trying to protect myself. I wasn't thinking about evidence collection." "Understandable," Richard said, though his tone suggested it was anything but. "But it makes prosecution more difficult without physical evidence of the drugging. However," he made more notes, "we may not need it. The hotel has security cameras throughout the ballroom. They'll show Marcus at your table when you were across the room. Show him touching your glass. That's circumstantial, but compelling." "What about his confessions?" I asked. "Everything he said on stage. The fraud, the kickbacks, the plan to force me out. Isn't that evidence?" The second attorney, woman, early 40s, angular glasses that made her look severe, looked up from her tablet. "That's complicated. His statements were made under the influence of an intoxicating substance he didn't knowingly consume. Defense will argue involuntary intoxication, that anything he said while drugged is inadmissible. But he drugged himself," I said. "He took the substance voluntarily, even if he didn't know which glass it was in." "Self-administered involuntary intoxication," she said. "It's a gray area in criminal law. The prosecution will argue it's admissible because he voluntarily possessed and administered the substance. Defense will argue it's inadmissible because he didn't intend to consume it himself. It'll be up to the judge." Jennifer Hartwell leaned forward, her exhaustion showing through her professional composure. "Alex, we need to know, were you aware of any financial irregularities before tonight? Any indication Marcus was cooking the books?" "No," I met her eyes directly. "I handle the technical side, architecture, development, product. Marcus handled operations and finance. That was our division of labor from day one. I trusted him completely." "But you found the restructuring paperwork yesterday," Richard said, "in his desk. What made you look there?" "I was looking for Q3 financial projections. He'd mentioned they were in his bottom drawer. I found the term sheet from Morrison, Burke and Associates instead." "And you didn't confront him?" "I was going to, tonight, after the announcement. I wanted to understand what was really happening before I accused him of anything. I thought maybe there was some explanation, some business reason I wasn't seeing." Richard exchanged glances with Jennifer, some silent communication I couldn't decode. "The confessions Marcus made on stage," Richard said carefully, "are extremely problematic for him, but they also potentially implicate the company in securities fraud. If he's been cooking the books for 18 months, every financial statement we've relied on is potentially fraudulent. That affects valuations, investment decisions, everything." At 1:30 in the morning, the police arrived. Detective Lisa Kowalski, Financial Crimes Division, SFPD. Late 40s, short gray hair, eyes that had seen every variety of white-collar crime Silicon Valley had to offer. She handed me a business card with her name and badge number embossed in official lettering. "Mr. Chen, I understand someone attempted to drug you tonight?" "Yes, my business partner, Marcus Reeves." "And where is Mr. Reeves currently?" "Hotel security took him to a room on the 3rd floor. He's being monitored by security staff. Still pretty out of it from whatever he took." Detective Kowalski nodded, making notes in a worn leather notebook. "I'll need your full statement. Then I'll need to interview Mr. Reeves, though anything he says while under the influence of an intoxicating substance may not be admissible in court. But the confessions he made on stage, there were 40 witnesses, recordings, video, potentially admissible if we can prove he voluntarily possessed and administered the substance, even if he didn't intend to consume it himself. It's complicated. We'll need to consult with the DA's office about the specific legal theory." She took my statement. Every detail, timeline, observations, the reflection in the window, the small vial, the practiced movement, the switching of glasses, Marcus's behavior during the speech, and the confessions that followed. "Mr. Chen, I have to ask, did you switch the glasses with intent to harm Mr. Reeves, to cause him to consume the substance he'd prepared?" I'd known this question was coming, had been preparing my answer for hours. "I switched them with intent to protect myself," I said carefully, choosing each word. "I didn't know what he'd put in the wine. I just knew it wasn't supposed to be there. I didn't want to drink it. As for what happened after that, Marcus chewed choosing to drink from that particular glass, that was his decision, not mine. That's a very careful answer, Detective Kowalski said. It's an honest answer. We'll see what the DA thinks. In the meantime, we need that hotel security footage, and we need to get Mr. Reeves to a hospital for a blood test and medical evaluation. Whatever he took, we need documentation for any potential criminal charges. At 20 minutes before 3 in the morning, Marcus was transported to UCSF Medical Center under police custody. I didn't go with him, didn't want to see him. The attorneys advised against any contact. Instead, I sat in the hotel conference room with Jennifer Hartwell while her legal team worked their phones, conducting damage control at 3 in the morning. I need to know the truth, Jennifer said when it was just the two of us, the attorneys having stepped out to make calls. All of it. No lawyer polish, no careful answers. How bad is the financial situation really? I honestly don't know, I said. Marcus handled the books. I built the product. That was always our split. But you must have seen something. Revenue reports, client numbers, board presentations. I pulled out my laptop from my bag. I'd brought it thinking we might need to show demos to investors, back when I thought tonight was actually a celebration. Opened DataSync's admin dashboard, the back-end system that tracked every client, every transaction, every data point in real time. This shows our actual client list, I said, turning the screen toward her. Real companies, real contracts, real recurring revenue. This is the source of truth, direct from our production database. Jennifer scrolled through the data, her expression growing darker with each page. This shows 847 active clients. Right. Marcus's investor deck, the one he sent us for Series B due diligence, showed 1,340 clients. My stomach dropped through the floor. What? The materials he sent last month. He claimed you had 1,340 enterprise clients with an average contract value of $34,000 annually. That's how we arrived at the $47 million valuation. I did the math. 847 times $34,000 was $28.8 million. 1,340 times $34,000 was $45.6 million. The difference was nearly $17 million in fictional annual recurring revenue. He made up almost 500 clients, I said quietly. At least, Jennifer's jaw tightened visibly, which means our entire valuation was based on fraudulent data, which means my firm invested $8 million in Series A based on lies, which means every due diligence call, every board meeting, every financial projection, all built on fiction. I didn't know, I said, meeting her eyes. I swear to God, Jennifer, I had no idea he was doing this. She studied my face for a long moment, the kind of assessment that venture capitalists perfect over decades of evaluating founders. I believe you. You're either genuinely shocked or you're the best actor I've ever met, and I've met some impressive liars. But we're going to verify everything. Every client, every contract, every line of code. If this company is built on fraud, it's worthless, and everyone who invested loses everything. The technology is real, I said desperately. The actual product works. It does what we claim it does. The clients we do have are happy. We have renewal rates above 90%, NPS scores in the 70s. The fraud is all on the business side. The technology may be real, Jennifer agreed, but the financial foundation is quicksand. We need to figure out if there's any way to salvage this without destroying the legitimate business you've built underneath Marcus's lies. Jennifer Hartwell brought in forensic accountants the next morning. Deloitte, the serious people with forensic accounting practices and no mercy for financial fraud. They descended on DataSync's offices at 8:30 with court orders and federal subpoenas, seizing servers, files, hard drives, everything that might contain evidence of Marcus's scheme. I gave them full access, helped them understand our technical architecture, showed them how to trace every client account, every transaction, every dollar that had actually moved through our systems versus the dollars Marcus had invented. The fraud was worse than anyone had initially thought. Marcus hadn't just inflated client numbers. He'd created an entire parallel universe of fake contracts, fictional companies with registered addresses at mail forwarding services, forged signatures on documents that looked completely legitimate. He'd built elaborate systems to generate fake invoices, fake payment records, fake customer service interactions. He'd used the fake numbers to raise Series A funding 18 months ago, then used the Series A money to create just enough real growth to make the fraud harder to spot during due diligence, then prepared to use the inflated numbers to raise Series B at an even higher valuation, or sell the company outright to a strategic acquirer and disappear with hundreds of millions of dollars. The lead forensic accountant estimated the total fraud at $23 million in fictional revenue over 18 months. This is one of the most sophisticated schemes I've seen in 23 years of forensic accounting, Patricia Henderson told me 2 days after the incident. She was mid-60s, gray hair, the exhausted look of someone who'd spent decades uncovering financial crimes and still found new ways people could lie. Most founders who cook books do it sloppily. Obvious red flags, easy patterns to spot. Your partner built an entire alternative reality with supporting documentation that would pass most standard due diligence reviews. He was always detail-oriented, I said numbly. He was also stealing directly from the company. We found $3.2 million in unauthorized wire transfers to offshore accounts over the past year. Shell companies in the Caymans, British Virgin Islands, Singapore. He's been systematically looting DataSync while preparing his exit strategy. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I shoved them in my pockets. Can the company survive this? Patricia looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. That depends on whether your investors want to salvage the legitimate business or cut their losses entirely. You've got real technology, real clients, real revenue. It's just 30% less than what Marcus claimed. The question is whether the fraud contaminated everything beyond repair, whether customers and partners will trust DataSync again after this. Marcus was arrested 4 days after the incident. Federal charges, securities fraud, wire fraud, attempted assault with a controlled substance. The DA's office had received the hospital blood test results, Rohypnol plus a research chemical called GHB17 that wasn't even FDA approved, apparently popular on dark web markets for its ability to make people highly suggestible while maintaining some cognitive function. Your partner tried to dose you with a pharmaceutical cocktail designed for interrogation purposes, Detective Kowalski explained when she called with the update. In combination with alcohol, the dose he prepared could have been fatal. You're extremely lucky you spotted him in that reflection. What happens now? He's being arraigned Monday morning, bail hearing, given the clear flight risk, offshore accounts, history of sophisticated deception, access to millions in potentially stolen funds. We're recommending he be held without bail until trial. And the confessions he made on stage? Legally complicated, she admitted. Defense will argue involuntary intoxication, that statements made under pharmaceutical influence aren't admissible. But we've got the hotel security footage showing him drugging your glass. We've got the blood test proving what substances were in his system. We've got 40 witnesses to his behavior. And we've got forensic accounting showing the fraud was real, not drug-induced fantasy. We don't need his confession to prove the case. We have evidence. Monday morning, I sat in the back row of the federal courthouse for Marcus's arraignment. He looked terrible, pale, gaunt, wearing an orange jumpsuit that swallowed his frame. His high-powered defense attorney from Crenshaw and Pike, Gerald Crenshaw himself, $1,200 per hour, argued for bail with practiced passion. Your Honor, Mr. Reeves has deep ties to the Bay Area community. He's lived here for 8 years. He's a respected tech entrepreneur. These charges are based on misunderstandings and statements made while Mr. Reeves was under the influence of substances he didn't knowingly consume. A misunderstanding? The federal prosecutor stood. Olivia Park, early 40s, 15 years as an AUSA, reputation for never losing white-collar cases. The defendant attempted to drug his business partner with Rohypnol and an illegal research chemical. He confessed on video in front of 40 witnesses to securities fraud, wire fraud, and embezzlement. He's been transferring millions to offshore accounts for months, clearly preparing to flee. This isn't a misunderstanding, Your Honor. This is a calculated criminal enterprise spanning 18 months. The judge, Honorable Patricia Winters, 62 years old, 26 years on the federal bench, known as one of the toughest judges in the Northern District, looked at Marcus over her reading glasses. Mr. Reeves, the evidence against you is substantial. The prosecution has demonstrated clear flight risk given your offshore financial arrangements. More importantly, you allegedly attempted to drug another person with dangerous substances. That presents a danger to the community. Bail is denied. You'll remain in federal custody pending trial. Marcus's face crumpled. His expensive lawyer whispered something urgent in his ear, probably telling him not to react, not to say anything. As the marshals led him away in shackles, Marcus looked directly at me across the courtroom. His eyes held something I couldn't quite read. Rage, betrayal, confusion. The look of someone who'd planned everything perfectly, executed every step flawlessly, only to watch it all explode because of one moment, one reflection in a window, one switched glass. I looked away first. I didn't owe him my attention anymore. Jennifer Hartwell's team at Cascade Ventures spent 3 months deciding whether DataSync could be salvaged. They brought in an interim CEO, veteran tech executive named Robert Harrison, who'd turned around 4 failing startups and taken 2 public. His job was brutal assessment. Could we save this company or should we just liquidate the assets? You've got legitimately good technology, he told me in our first meeting, sitting in what used to be Marcus's corner office. Real clients who genuinely need your product and are happy with it. The fraud was all on the business side. Inflated numbers, fake contracts. But the actual software works exactly as advertised. So we can save it? Maybe. We need to completely rebuild credibility with the market. Bring in a new CFO with an impeccable reputation. Submit to ongoing third-party audits. Be radically transparent with investors, customers, everyone. Fire anyone who had any knowledge of Marcus's schemes. And you, he pointed at me with a pen, need to step up in ways you never have before. You're CTO, but you're also the only founder left standing. The only one who didn't commit federal crimes. If DataSync survives, it's because people trust you to lead it out of this disaster. We hired a new CFO, Janet Kim, 20 years at PwC, reputation for absolutely brutal honesty about financial realities. We brought in an independent board with no ties to Marcus. We restructured the equity, My 40% stayed intact. Marcus's 40% was seized by the court as proceeds of crime. The remaining 20% was redistributed to investors as partial compensation for their losses. 11 of our original 18 investors sued DataSync and me personally. 8 eventually settled after forensic accounting proved I had no knowledge of the fraud. 3 pulled out entirely, writing off their investments. But 7 investors stayed. They believed in the technology, believed in the legitimate business we'd built beneath Marcus's elaborate lies. 6 months after that night at the Peninsula Hotel, we closed a new funding round. Not Series B, that designation felt cursed. We called it a recapitalization round. Not $20 million. That valuation was built on fiction, but $6.5 million from investors who'd done brutal due diligence on the real numbers, who'd verified every single client contract personally, who knew exactly what they were buying. It was enough to survive. It was enough to rebuild. Marcus's trial happened 9 months after his arrest. Federal courthouse in San Francisco. Courtroom 4B. 3 weeks of testimony. Forensic accountants explaining the fraud in excruciating detail. Investors describing how they'd been deceived. Detective Kowalski presenting the evidence of attempted drugging. Hotel security footage showing Marcus at my table, his hand hovering over my wine glass, the suspicious movement. I testified on day 4. Mr. Chen, the prosecutor asked, when you saw Marcus Reeves put something in your wine glass, what went through your mind? Terror, I said honestly. Complete terror and confusion. We'd been partners for 5 years, best friends. I trusted him with my life, my career, everything. Seeing him drug my drink, watching it happen in that window reflection, it shattered everything I thought I knew about him. Why did you switch the glasses? Self-preservation. Pure survival instinct. I didn't know what he'd put in the wine. I didn't know what he was planning. I just knew I couldn't drink it. Did you intend for Mr. Reeves to consume the drugged wine himself? I'd practiced this answer with my own attorney for hours. I intended to protect myself, I said carefully, clearly, looking directly at the jury. What happened after that, Marcus choosing to drink from that particular glass, that was his choice. I didn't force him to drink anything. He made that decision himself. The defense attorney, Gerald Crenshaw, still charging $200 per hour to defend the indefensible, tried to paint me as calculated, vindictive, someone who'd switched the glasses not to protect myself, but to destroy my partner in some elaborate revenge scheme. Isn't it true you'd discovered the restructuring paperwork the day before the dinner? Yes. And you were angry about being pushed out of your own company? I was hurt and confused. Not angry enough to poison anyone, but hurt enough to switch the glasses? Hurt enough to let your partner consume dangerous drugs while 40 people watched? I didn't let him do anything, I said firmly. He drugged that wine himself. He brought those substances to the dinner. He made the decision to pour them into a glass. All I did was make sure he couldn't drug me. What he did after that was his responsibility, not mine. The jury deliberated for 11 hours over 2 days. Guilty on all counts. Securities fraud, wire fraud, attempted assault with a controlled substance, conspiracy to commit fraud. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison and ordered restitution of $8.7 million to defrauded investors. Marcus didn't react when the sentence was read, just stared straight ahead, his face a carefully blank mask. As they let him out, he looked at me one last time. I looked back, and I didn't feel guilty, didn't feel vindicated, didn't feel anything except tired, just incredibly bone-deep tired. I still run DataSync. We're smaller now, more honest about our numbers, more careful about growth. We have 891 real clients, $31 million in actual annual recurring revenue, a team of 73 people who believe in building something legitimate. Sometimes late at night in the office, I think about that moment at the Peninsula Hotel, the reflection in the window, Marcus's hand hovering over my glass, the decision to switch them. Sometimes I wonder if I should have handled it differently, confronted him directly, called the police before he could take the stage, walked away and let him drug himself without my intervention. But then I remember the term sheet hidden in his desk, the plan to dilute my shares to nothing, the 18 months of elaborate fraud, the $3.2 million he'd stolen, the offshore accounts he'd prepared for his escape. Marcus didn't make one bad decision that night. He made hundreds of calculated criminal choices over 18 months. He built an entire fraudulent empire while I was writing code and serving clients and trusting my partner like an idiot. The drug in my wine glass wasn't an aberration. It was the logical conclusion of who he'd become. Last month, I got a letter from federal prison, from Marcus, handwritten on lined prison paper. I almost threw it away without reading it. Almost. Alex, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know what I did was unforgivable. My lawyer told me the drug confession thing actually helped my case in a weird way. Proved I was out of my mind, not in control. Didn't matter. Still got 12 years. I'm in therapy here. Court mandated. My therapist says I need to make amends, so here it is. I'm sorry. I was jealous. You were the genius. Everyone knew the technology was yours. I was just the business guy, replaceable. As DataSync grew, I felt myself becoming less important. You could have built it without me, but I couldn't have built anything without you. So I tried to take it, tried to erase you from the story. I'm sorry for everything. You deserved better. I know I destroyed our friendship, our partnership, everything we built. I know you'll never forgive me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just wanted you to know I'm sorry. Marcus. I read it twice. Then I filed it in the same drawer with all the other legal documents from that nightmare year. I didn't write back. Some apologies come too late. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some people poison their own drinks and blame you for not stopping them.